I'm Greg Copeland. New tonight, we have details in the 18-year-old murder case of Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Wales. Last month, the first charge was filed against an Everett woman accused of lying to a Seattle grand jury about statements that she made about two suspects in the case. Now we're learning about her relationship with those suspects.
In the indictment, 34-year-old Shauna Reed is asked whether she previously told the FBI that Suspect 1 bragged to her about his involvement in the murder of a judge or attorney that lived on top of a hill. Tonight we know Suspect 1 is a 38-year-old Camino Island resident that Reed dated on and off several years ago, and he was repeatedly questioned by the FBI in this case. That's according to the Seattle Times, which also describes their small circle of friends, which includes Suspect 2, the alleged hitman, a 50-year-old from Snohomish County. Now, it's unclear whether he matches the FBI's sketch of the man seen running from Wales' backyard the night of that shooting. Neither of the suspects is being named because neither is charged in this case. Wales was shot in his Queen Anne home in October of 2011.
Greg Copeland with that report.